Hello friends. Welcome to my YouTube channel. In today's video, we are going to talk about how can we set up our first project in VS Code and how can we connect it to our Salesforce org. As well as we will be retrieving the metadata from the Salesforce org and first Lightning Web component which we are going to create. We will have a hands-on session for that in today's video. And also after creating Lightning Web Component, we will be deploying it to Salesforce org to see it working live. And also we will be looking into some components of Lightning Web Components, like what are the different files it contains, what is the structure of Lightning Web Component. So with this context, let's get started. So first we will see how can we set up a project or a Salesforce project in VS Code. So basically, we will be first creating a project in the VS Code and we will be connecting it with our Salesforce org to retrieve or deploy the metadata from the Salesforce org. So to do so, we will be using a shortcut command, that is your Control plus Shift plus P. So by using that, you will get a command box something like this what you are seeing currently, and in that if you type sfdx you will get an option to create a project with manifest. So once I click on that, you will get an option of either standard, empty or analytics. So usually we use a standard for creating a Salesforce project. So we will be selecting the standard, and now what will be your project name here? So I will say uh, LWC demo, and then I'll just hit enter. It will ask for me location where I want to store this project. So let's say I just want to store it on the desktop, and then I'll just create a project. So now if you see, it has created a project for me with a pre-built structure into it, which contains your force app and manifest and script. So after you create your project in VS Code, now the second step is how we will connect it with our Salesforce org. So for connecting it to our Salesforce org, we will again going to use our Control Shift P keys, and we will be opening up a command prompt or our command box, you can say, and then you can just search for authorize. So you will get an option called SFDX authorize an org. So this uh, SFDX command will be connecting your VS Code project to your Salesforce org. So let's see how it's going to work. So I'll just click on enter, and it will ask me like what is the URL. So basically, if you are using a production, by default it takes your login.salesforce.com, or if you have a sandbox, it will take the test of sandbox. If you have any custom URL in the sense that in Salesforce we have a feature that we can generate our own custom domain URL, and user can only log in with that particular domain URL. So if that's the case, you can use a custom URL here as well. So in our case, since we are using the developer sandbox, so it's going to be login.salesforce.com. So I'll just select keep the project default, and I'll just click on enter. Then you will see a box with VS Code org. So we don't need to change anything into this as well. You just press enter. And now you see our um, extension has started working. So after your authorize and or command runs in VS Code, you will be redirected to the Salesforce login page where you need to provide your credentials, and you will be logging into Salesforce. So I'll give my credential here to log in. Yep. So after I successfully log in into my Salesforce org, so basically you will be logged in into Salesforce org after providing your credentials. As you can see, I have been successfully logged in into my dev org. Now, if I go back to VS Code, so in VS Code, now you can see that you got a message that authorize and org ran successfully. This means the connection between your developer org and the VS Code has been set up successfully. Now, how we can test that? Or let's say if you want to check that connection is successful and we are able to retrieve the metadata. So to do so, you can go to manifest folder, and in that there is a package.xml which looks something like this. In this package.xml, you can define the metadata which you want to retrieve from your Salesforce edition or Salesforce org. So, for example, I have kept Apex class, components, triggers. Aura definition bundle is your Aura components basically, and Lightning component bundle. These are your LWC components. Now, star refers that you want to retrieve all the metadata. For example, star with Apex class will fetch all the Apex classes which you have in your org. Let's say if you want to work only on certain specific classes, so in that case, instead of star, you can just give the class name like class 1. Similarly, you can just keep on adding the members into this, like class 1, then class 2. So in this way, you can just specify the Apex class with which you want to work. And not only Apex class, any component, trigger, or any metadata. So if you know any specific metadata on which you want to work, you can extract that as well instead of extracting everything. So now I have the package.xml ready. If I right click, you can see that there will be an option that retrieve source in manifest from org. So once I click on this, it will start retrieving the metadata from your org. It might take little time. It can happen faster as well. Depends on how much metadata you are retrieving. So how big your org, how heavy your org is, it depends on that. So as you can see, the command has run successfully. You will get a message that retrieve source from org run successfully. Now, if I go to force app folder, so you can see there are already multiple folders which has been created into the force app folder. So these folders are specific to the metadata. For example, we have a folder named classes, then we have LWC, we have your aura, we have our components. So all the classes which you have retrieved will go in the classes folder. Similarly, whatever the LWC component you retrieve, it will go into LWC folder and so on. Now, if I open the classes, you can see that the classes has been retrieved successfully. So with this, we can tell that yeah, the link has been already connect link has been established and you are able to retrieve the metadata from your org. Now, let's start with creating our first LWC component. So to start creating your LWC component, you need to open the command palette. Command palette can be opened in two ways. Either you can use Control Shift and P keyword, or you can just right click and there will be an option of command palette here. Once your command palette opens, you can just search for lightning web component and see you get an option to create lightning web component. I'll just click on this, and now you need to give your lightning web component name. Just remember your lightning web component name should start with the small case. So any name if you are giving, the first alphabet should be the small case. So in this scenario, I'll be giving, let's say, uh, tutorial LWC component. And if I press enter, it will ask me the directory where I want to store it. So to work the CLI, to make CLI work properly, or to make CLI, pick up the proper LWC component, this is the folder structure which we keep. That is your force app main default and LWC. From this folder, usually your CLI picks up the LWC components. So we will be keeping the default folder structure or the default directory, and we just press enter. Now it started creating your LWC component. So as you can see, you got your first LWC component created here. Now let's go through what are the different files we have in LWC component. So basically, when you create, by default, you get three files. First is your HTML file. So your HTML file is the face of your LWC component. Any UI you want to show on the LWC component, like any screen or something, you will be adding your code, or you can say your HTML tags in this HTML file. So let's take a small example. Let's say I'll be just adding a text here. So first thing to consider, your HTML file will always have your closing and starting tags as template. So basically all your code will go into the template. Now let me just write a small paragraph here. Like, this is my first LWC component and I am excited. So this is just a small text which I want to show on the UI. Now the second file which we have is our JS file, or we call it as JavaScript file. In short, you can just call it as a JS file. So your JS file always imports or always extends a lightning element class. So what this lightning element class is? This is the base class for, or not class, I would say it's a base file for all your LWC component, because this lightning element base file contains all your lifecycle hook related callback methods like rendered callback or connected callback. We will discuss about them as well in our further videos. So for now, it's just to remember that lightning element is the base file for your LWC component. So if you try to remove this extends LWC, uh, basically extends lightning element, you will not be able to deploy the LWC component in your Salesforce org. Third thing to notice here, we are using an export. So what does this export do? This export is going to make this JavaScript class as public, and it will be exposed to other Lightning Web Components as well. For example, let's say I have one Lightning component called my LWC. Okay. Now there are certain functionalities or certain business logic which I have written in my current LWC component, that is tutorial web component, and I want to use the same logic in my LWC component as well. So instead of writing the code again there, I can just import the tutorial LWC component JavaScript file into my LWC. So to do that, what you need to do, you need to just write the import and then your let's say any class name. uh, I would say tutorial file from the path. So it will be like, uh, and then it will give you all the LWC component from where you want to fetch. So this is a way of using the import and export, which is again a advanced feature of JavaScript, which is present in your web components. Now, since we are not using it here, that was just an overview. So in short, if I tell, you can just write some reusable methods, you can export it, or basically you are making it as public, and then any other component can import your JavaScript file, or not complete file, it can also import only certain functions and then they can use it. So this is where your reusability is coming into picture, which we discussed in our first tutorial. So this is the use of import and export in JavaScript file. Now, this JS file basically contains all your business logic which you want to perform on the client side. So, since it is a JavaScript file, your business logics are going to run very fast. And in our further videos, you will see what are different logics we can do, what are we will be writing certain business logics to give you more depth understanding. So, for now, it's just that we have a JS file which is used for doing your business logics in the Lightning Web Component. Third file, and the most important file I would say, is the meta file or meta.xml. This is the backbone file of your LWC component. That is, it is the main configuration file. This meta XML file of your LWC component will decide that whether you want to expose your Lightning Web Component. Expose means if you keep this attribute as true, then only you will be able to see your Lightning Web Component in the app builder pages or wherever you can drag and drop the components. So is exposed is basically exposing your web components on the app builders. Similarly, we have other attributes as well. So like we have the description, we have master label where you can define or you can give a label to your LWC component. You can just give some description about your Lightning Web component. And then we have something called targets. What target do? So target is used to specify that where you're going to use your LWC component. So for example, let's say if I want to create a custom tab and I want to use my Lightning Web component into that tab. So here I will be specifying the target as Lightning tab. This means that now I am authorized to use the LWC component as a tab in Salesforce org. Similarly, you have other targets as well, like Lightning Flow Screen. For example, if you want to use the LWC component in your screen flows, or if you want to use it in the utility bars, you can use lightning underscore underscore utility bar. And similarly, there are multiple targets which we have in LWC, which is provided by Salesforce. So we will go through them one by one as we will move forward in our tutorial, in our further videos, when we will be doing a deep dive into the codes. So for now, let's say if I just want to include or if I want to expose the Lightning Web component as a tab. So how I will be doing it? I will be specifying targets here. So this target will make my LWC component exposed to, or it can be now used as a Lightning tab. So I'll just save it. I'll just save it. Now, the next step is now we need to deploy this LWC component on our Salesforce org. See, whatever we have done till now, we have created an LWC component, but they all are still local on your machine. They are in your VS Code. They are not even current. They are not even on the Salesforce org currently. So to deploy this Lightning Web component on your Salesforce org, how we can do it? So for that, you can just do a right click and you will get an option that deploys source to org. So I'll just click on this and it will start deploying the Lightning Web component in my org. So if you can see, I have got the output that all the files has been successfully created under Lightning component bundle. Now I'll go to my org and I'll check for Lightning components. So we named it as tutorial. So I'll go to T. Yeah. So if you see here, my Lightning Web component has been successfully deployed in Salesforce org and now it's ready to be used. So this is my Lightning Web component name, that is tutorial LWC component. Now, as we discussed, we will be utilizing it to create a custom tab. So I'll just tabs. Yeah. And I'll come down to Lightning component tabs. So see at the end, this is also Lightning component. Basically now in Salesforce, to create a component in Lightning framework, we got two ways, either to use Aura component or to use LWC component. So, and both comes under same umbrella of your Lightning component. So that's why it is named here as Lightning component tabs. Now, once you click on new, you can see your lightning web component name which we have created. That is our tutorial LWC component. I'll just select the lightning component. I'll give a name as tutorial tab. So I'll go with the default setting. If you want to update the settings, you can just do it via selecting the different tab visibility for different profiles. But I'll just keep it as default on currently for all the profiles. And now I'll save it. So now my custom tab is ready. Let's test it now. So if I search on the setup, my tutorial tab, this is my tutorial tab. I'll click on it, and now my lightning web component has been successfully deployed and being created as a tab. So this is a base component, I would say, currently. So before we end this video, there's one more thing which I want to explain. So we current by default we get only 3 files in LWC component. But what about if we want to include certain stylings or certain CSS? So to do that, the option which you have is, you let's say you selected any file, let's say HTML. Okay, right click, copy, and then Control V, you will just paste it. Okay, now this, we just need to rename this. So I'll be using CSS. Okay, now this has created a CSS file for me. Now whatever styling I want to do, I can do in this CSS file. So in this video, we basically covered how we are going to create our first LWC component, some basics of our LWC component. And in our further videos, we will be dig down more into the LWC component. We'll try to learn more concepts of LWC component to make you ready for the industry. So with that, let's wrap up this video here, and thanks for your time.